Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Maisy Mok. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Hong Kong workers received 3.8% more on average this year, falling behind their regional counterparts. Chocolate lovers beware. The Consumer Council discovers some samples contain more fats and sugar than they proclaim. And a sliver of hope for Gaza residents as aid and fuel begin to trickle into the enclave from Egypt. Hong Kong workers on average received a pay rise of 3.8% this year, according to a survey of over 200 firms. That paled in comparison to the 5.5% hike for their Greater Bay Area counterparts. In an annual survey of over 200 local companies, the Hong Kong Institute of Human Resource Management found that employees on average received a 3.8% pay rise this year. Of those 131,000 employees surveyed, 93% enjoyed a pay rise, while the rest had their wages frozen. Institute President Lawrence Hong described the level of adjustment as conservative and mild.
While Hong Kong's economy has shown signs of recovery following the full border opening earlier this year, it is important to acknowledge the cautious and conservative business environment influenced by the global economy. Furthermore, the ongoing talent shortage presents significant challenges for organizations. As a result, employers are taking a prudent and thoughtful approach to salary increment.
Rather than referencing from competitors, Hong noted local firms preferred gauging the performances of their business and employees when adjusting staff wages. The institute also found that certain trades offered more generous pay increases. These included medical and healthcare, transport and logistics, and construction. Looking ahead, the group projected a pay rise of 4.1% next year. That is considerably lower than the 5.4% projected for 384 firms located in 9 other Greater Bay Area cities. That estimate was based on the 5.5% increase for workers from those companies this year. But Alpha Chan from Human Resources Agency CIIC, which jointly conducted the survey, said the increment adjustment between the two regions should not be directly compared. He explained mainland workers are generally earning less, meaning employers are not under as much pressure to control costs. The Hong Kong Medical Association is calling on the government to do more to tackle dementia. A pilot program was launched between June and September to study 8 senior citizens diagnosed with dementia. Under the program, volunteers would pay regular visits to their homes and play board games with them. In return, researchers would monitor the patient's communication, emotion, and focus. After 8 board game sessions, the patients began to show improvement in their cognitive abilities. The association hopes to enlist more volunteers for the program so that the service can be expanded to other districts.
The good point of like these kind of board game versus electronic device is it was meant to be increase the social interaction, human to human interaction, because we understand social isolation is also a risk factor of dementia, which is particularly prominent during the times of COVID.
Chief Executive John Lee was joined by top officials and business leaders as they departed for Beijing for the 3rd Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. The 17-member delegation includes 6 bureau chiefs and 11 senior government officials. Lee said the group will take turns to attend seminars in the 2-day event, which commences tomorrow. Apart from networking with other world leaders, the SAR is expected to sign over $450 million of project contracts, he added. Representatives of over 130 countries and 30 international organizations are arriving in the capital. President Xi Jinping will deliver a keynote speech to renew his support for the initiative. The Consumer Council has found that certain chocolate bars claim to have less sugar and fat than they actually contained. It also urged people to eat no more than 1 bar per week. Janice Yu reports.
While chocolate bars are delicious and rich in antioxidants, people often overlook other ingredients which may pose health risks. The Consumer Council examines 29 milk and dark chocolate samples, analyzing their nutritional content and heavy metal contamination. But researchers found something else. 3 samples were found to contain much more saturated fat than their labels claimed, from 34% for Lucullus to a whopping 129% for this dark chocolate bar from Millicim. Meanwhile, one sample, Amity, was found with cadmium levels exceeding European levels by 17%.
We have to be mindful about, this long-term impact in our kidney. So if we have the choice, obviously, best to select product that is below the tolerable, the limit of it, and also, if even possible, to avoid.
Wong also pointed out that all 29 chocolate samples tested contained traces of cadmium, but the amount was generally smaller in milk chocolates because of their lower cocoa content. Apart from cadmium, lead and arsenic were also tested in the 29 products, but none of them exceeded the maximum permitted levels set out by Chinese National Food Safety Standard. The watchdog also reminded consumers, especially children and pregnant women, to enjoy chocolate in moderation because of its caffeine content. A general rule is to eat no more than 100 grams per week, or the equivalent to 1 chocolate bar. The findings have also been forwarded to the Center for Food Safety to follow up. Janice Yu, HKIBC.
Turning overseas, the United Nations has repeated its warning that a humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding in the Gaza Strip. But hope is on the horizon as a ceasefire has been agreed upon so that aid supplies can be delivered from Egypt, while foreigners stuck in the enclave can leave. Raymond Yen reports.
Apart from pitch-black conditions because electricity was cut, Gaza residents spent the night in fear as Israeli airstrikes continued on the enclave. The Israeli military said it has so far eliminated around 250 military targets across Gaza. After more than a week of air raids, all signs are suggesting that the ground operation could begin any time. Thousands of troops, tanks, and weaponry are now lined up along the border fence with Gaza. More are expected to arrive, as some 360,000 military reserves were asked to report for active duty. Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi, who admitted failure last week for letting Hamas fighters infiltrate Israeli neighborhoods, inspected the situation near the Gaza border. Our responsibility now is to enter Gaza and take over spots where Hamas is based, he said during a speech to soldiers. We need to hit every commander and combatant and destroy the infrastructure. But even before their arrival, large parts of Gaza are already in ruins. And instead of Hamas, most casualties were civilians whose homes were bombed without prior warning. Those who survived the attacks are not really better off as they scramble to find food and water.
As I speak with you, Gaza is running out of water and electricity. In fact, Gaza is being strangled, and it seems that the world right now has lost its humanity. Thousands of desperate displaced people rationing also their food and their water. In fact, an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding under our eyes.
Amid the tragedy were finally some good news. Oil tankers and trucks carrying food and aid supplies were seen entering from Egypt through the Rafah border crossing this morning, local time. The fuel will be pivotal to keep generators running at hospitals. Foreigners were also allowed to leave Gaza as the crossing reopened following negotiations between the United States, Israel, and Egypt. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
An elderly man in the U.S. state of Illinois has been charged with murder and hate crimes after stabbing a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy to death.
The mother of the boy and the boy were in their unit. Basically, they're renting a floor in the house of this man who committed this crime. When he knocked on their door, she opened it. He had knocked on the door many times before. She had no reason to suspect anything. And when he opened the door, he proceeded to choke her, the mother, who's 32 years old. Her name is Hanan, and attempted to stab her. And she ran into the bathroom and called 911. And by the time she came out, he had located and murdered her child, 6-year-old Wadia, by stabbing. This all happened in seconds, and he paid the price for the atmosphere of hate and otherization and dehumanization that, frankly, I think we are seeing here in the United States as a result of the irresponsible leadership and lopsided, one-sided statements and coverage that we're seeing in the media, elected officials all across.
Police allege that 71-year-old landlord Joseph Chuba singled out the pair because they were Muslims. The mother suffered a dozen stab wounds but is expected to survive. President Joe Biden said he was sickened by the attack and said hate acts have no place in the U.S. Hong Kong stocks headed south on the first day of the week, in line with other Asian markets, as investors are growingly concerned that the conflict between Israel and Hamas could further destabilize the Middle East. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down by 173 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tracker Fund was down 17 cents, Tencent was down $5.60, while Meituan was down 90 cents. JD.com was down 50 cents, BYD Company was down $3, while Ping An was down $1.20. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euro is at 8.23, the British pound is at 9.52, while the Australian dollar is at 4.94. And in the UK market, the London FTSE is currently up 22 points. On to the weather now. It will be mainly cloudy tomorrow with occasional rain. Temperatures will range between 22 and 26 degrees. Rain will appear more frequently in the middle of this week. That's our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Maisy Mok. Thanks for watching. Good night.